o'clock yet? Can we start? It was awkward that I can't hear anybody. You couldn't say things, Jen, because I can't see you doing my thumbs up. You will you just come in so people can see what you look like? She's shy, everybody. So this is Jen. Yeah, yeah, she's in my office. Okay, it's 5, right? I can go? Okay, I can go. Hi. I'm gonna try to keep this, I think, the goal is to try to keep this under an hour because my kids come home from wrestling practice and they'll be disruptive. So I'm gonna just dive in and I think Jen and I decided that I think you guys can all figure out there's that react button at the bottom. And if you raise your hand, wait, how did we decide they were just gonna write a chat? They're gonna type in a chat a question if you have a question as the thing is going. And when she gets to like, I don't know, a good point of like 5 good questions or something, that's like on that certain topic, I'll answer them and we're just going to wing it and we're going to have a good time and we're going to raise some money. That's the whole goal of this is to essentially share kind of what this whole the last like 3 years have been for Connect Wellness and where I see it going and how we're going to get there. So I'll the kind of the nuts and bolts of how I started. Before I started Connect, the previous 10 years, I'd worked for my parents' construction company. They started an industrial construction company. And so I worked with them from startup to when they sold it to corporate owners from 2008 to they sold it in 2018. So I really, that was like the nuts and bolts of me learning how to start a business, grow a business, how to take calculated risk, all of that kind of stuff. And my dad is, to this day, kind of one of my biggest cheerleaders and business mentors. And so he kind of helps point me in a direction. But I will say that he told me Connect Wellness was a bad idea and I shouldn't do it. So I don't always take his advice. I really lean into my intuition and I do a lot of prayer and meditation. So um, it was towards let's see, 2017 was the first time that I actually ever did a thermal cycle. I went over to the Everett House. A friend took me and he coached me through the cold plunge because I was not into like doing a cold plunge. And I experienced it for the first time and I was like, why is this not everywhere? Like cold plunging, this practice of hot and cold and rest should be everywhere. And so from 2017 on, I just basically became a spa junkie and hot springs junkie. And I just kind of traveled and I checked out all these different types of spas. And I was still working for my parents' company. And I had built my own spa with the barrel sauna and then clawfoot tubs in the shower. That's kind of how I started in the upper spa area. If you've been to the spa, I know there's probably some people here that have never been to the spa. So I'll do my best to kind of explain it. But um, so COVID happened and I got laid off and I had some money saved up and I was kind of thinking like, I think I should just make a go of starting a spa. So I had went through the process with the business plan and all of that stuff. And I got to a point where I was like, okay, I think I had about $75,000 that I could play with. I was about to sell some real estate. So I knew I'd be getting like I would have another 150,000 coming in. And I just said, I wonder if people will come to my backyard, essentially. And so fall of 21, I got a business license and I made a website and I had 2 months left of unemployment. And I was like, okay, I got 2 months to make this work. I'm going to do my best. And within, I don't know, I started with four sessions a day and I only had 4 people at a time. And within like 2 months, I knew it was going to be successful. Um, at the 2 month mark, I was making enough money to supplement, like, take over my unemployment income. And then I just kind of grew and grew and grew. I'd say probably at the 6 month mark, my brother Jeremy was one of my first members, and he said, "Michelle, you're gonna run out of sauna space." So I took out a HELOC and I found Daniel, who built this little sauna that we called Gypsy. He was just selling it on Craigslist. I befriended him and I bought that sauna. And then I just kind of essentially used all of the credit I could muster. So I did cash out refinance and credit cards and kind of all that stuff. And I grew it from, um, let's see, I think I actually wonder if this is a good time to share my little thing I made. Oh yeah. Hey, look at that. How do I, okay. Can you see this? Hang on, what? Okay. So I made this cute little thing. This is what I did today to keep my mind off of this this meeting because I don't like to have a script. I'm just kind of winging it with my very rough outline. So you can see kind of where I started. Year one, I it was 2022 was my first full year. I had 4 to 8 people on average per session, gross sales of 117,000. Year two, we bumped to 8 to 12 people per session. My gross sales were 437,000. What are you saying to yourself? What in your little backyard? That's crazy, Michelle. So year three, which we just finished, we're at pretty much maxed out at 22 people per session. And that's really if we don't have anyone in the private spa. And our gross sales are at 114,000. So I'm going to take this off. I think you guys have enough time to see it. Yeah. 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 That's a great question. The question was, how much capital did it take to get to that point? So when I look at my QuickBooks, I probably, and I should have pulled these numbers. I apologize. I spent about 430,000 of my own money, which was a mix of I had some really great real estate deals. I cashed in all my retirement. I sold one of my kids. Just joking. I did not sell any of my kids, but um, I took every credit card offer that came, especially ones that had you could write yourself a check and they'd give you 12 months of 0% interest. So that is um pretty much how I funded it. And the reason I did it that way, I'll tell you the little story, is that um it's hard to get funding with the bank. And when I first started, I had some money and I didn't know if this idea was going to take off. So I just kind of wanted to test it and it took off. And then at the 18-month mark, I was like, okay, I was, rocking. I was ready to get, another influx of capital. And I did all of the steps to get SBA financing. And I talked to KeyBank and Chase Bank, and they liked me, obviously, but they said, um, at 18-month mark, you're not considered a startup and you haven't hit 2 years. So they wouldn't give me any money because I hadn't gotten to the 2 year mark. So I took a cash out refinance on my home and took out another 130,000 in equity to kind of get over the humps to get to the basically from the 12 people at a time to the 22 people at a time, as I've just been using that HELOC, tapped that out, and then super grateful that the business has been very consistent and we have a healthy profit margin. And so basically the last 9 months have been um, you know, about Tuesday during the week, I'll know how much money I'm going to be getting on Friday, and then I decide if I'm going to hire contractors next week. And If you only knew how razor thin I have been running this, where I'm essentially spending as much money as we make to pour back in to make the spa better. So hopefully that answered the question. Sometimes I go on rabbit trails with my question, my answers.
Thank you.
Okay,
That
so
was helpful.
okay, you're welcome. Jen, is there any more questions about how I started or and don't forget these are noise canceling, so you're gonna have to be loud. Okay. That is why we have to move. It's because I am operating in a residentially zoned property and how I'm running is not cool. Says code enforcement. So I kind of knew that I was flirting with the breaking the rules by starting the spa, but I was extremely passionate about how much better my mental health was and my physical health since starting the thermal cycle process. So I was like, government be damned. I know that sounds terrible, but it was a calculated risk essentially. I talked to somebody in the city about uh operating in a residential and learned essentially that the only way they will come, code enforcement will come to your property and potentially shut you down is if a neighbor who is directly bordering your property files a complaint. So essentially, I that leaves one, two, three, four. I have four neighbors. I had lived there for a long time. Excuse me for burping. Um, I'd lived there a long time, so I had become, you know, pretty close and, I'm a good neighbor. And so they did not say anything, especially because when I first started, it wasn't really that many customers. But that is kind of where we're at this last summer. One of my neighbors finally did um I saw a question. Well, you have to close down the spa. I'll get to that. So one of my neighbors finally said something to code enforcement, and code enforcement came and took a look around and was like, okay, I see what you're doing. You're not really being totally disruptive. You've been doing this for 3 years. This is our first complaint. So we're going to work with you essentially to, um, until you can, we're not going to shut you down until you find a place, but you got to do it. You got to go fast. So that was, I don't know, I'd say, I want to say like June of last summer, something like that, which has been kind of, a fear of mine. I was that, okay, I know my time is running, like at some point this party is not going to last forever. So, that is pretty much it. But the kind of the crux. So I'm also talking to the health department because um there are not, so far, there are not any UL certified cold plunges that are freestanding that any health department has approved because um, it's such a new thing. And so I think that's kind of what is the saving grace is that it's such an emerging market that the health department and all of those things, the regulatory government agencies are having kind of a tough time kind of keeping up with all this new market. So they've been pretty lenient, I'd say. Did I answer that? I wish I could see like, oh yeah, what was the question? I'll let you know. Here's the question. This is what the question was that I was. Oh, got you, got you. Did they got that last question though, I think. Okay. Really good at this, you guys. Do I want to talk about how I pay myself? Yes. I didn't really take a salary the first year or two. I basically used that's what a lot of my savings was used for was to like pay for groceries essentially. Um, but when I first started, I was operating as an LLC, and so I was taking a draw. And then when I started actually getting employees, I switched to an S corp and I started paying myself through the payroll company. So now I just take a normal salary. I saw a question. How long did it take before you? I'm assuming that is how long before I could take a salary. Well, I mean, it was how long did it take before I became profitable? Well, pretty immediate because I wasn't taking a very high salary, but I scaled the business in a way that was, I like to say very smart. Essentially, I cash flow is king. And so that's the one thing I learned with my working for my parents' company is kind of how to forecast how much cash flow you're going to have and to give yourself a buffer and but you have to grow. So it's that whole like risk and reward and just kind of pushing the growth part. But because I did it that way, I started with 4 days a week and then I just kind of gradually, I think about the 6 month mark, I was pretty tired. I needed to like have some time away. And so I had my dear friend Rebecca, who I went to high school with. Well, we did high school church together. She started volunteering for me, and we did a barter system. So essentially, Rebecca she started working Mondays. And I think at that point, I had probably added an extra day to the spa calendar. So Rebecca would come, and at that point, it was pretty easy in the sense that the spa was a lot less demanding as far as my time because used I just had the electric sauna and then I eventually had the wood-fired sauna, but I only fired up the wood sauna gypsy when I had enough customers to do that. So the electric sauna was pretty easy. But I tell you at the beginning, before I upgraded the heater on that, it was like a dial system. So I had to like every 45 minutes go out into the sauna and turn the dial for the customers, which was just silly when you think about, but you got to start with something essentially. But I don't want to get too far into the weeds on like all the nuts and bolts of how I operated, just because the point of this video is more to explain what the growth is and what my fundraising thing is. If you guys want to do another video, like if there's like a lot of interest on which I think that there is. That's a lot of the questions that I get, phone calls and stuff. Like I had a gal today from Indiana. She came to the spa. She's doing the copycat thing. She's wanting to open one up. My friend Rebecca that I told you about who volunteered for me, Rebecca and her husband Paul actually own Uptown Sauna House, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. It's in downtown Vancouver. So once Rebecca and Paul fell in love with the thermal cycle, they realized that they wanted to have a spa in their backyard too. And so they asked me if I would be offended if they became my first competitors. Like, go for it, man. Which is hard, it's that whole idea of like scarcity mindset, um, and being afraid that if I share too much information with people about how I started, how I operate, like my sales, all of that stuff, that I will be out of business. Like I'm basically giving the keys to I don't even know what the right word is, but I'm essentially like laying it all out there. Like, what kind of dummy business owner does that? Right? Like, hey, this is how you can start the same business. But I think that taps into the next, my next topic, which is what my mission is in this industry. And my mission is essentially to keep this beautifully rich tradition that's been around thousands of years in the hands of people, right? Like the community that actually needs it. So I do not want this because essentially what's happening is like this practice, sauna and cold plunge, cold exposure and all of that stuff is been around for a long time. And in Europe, they do it, they just do it all over the world except for the United States. So it's just now starting to take hold in the United States. And so I feel like we're at like kind of a pivotal point to make sure that this practice stays affordable for people um and accessible and inclusive. Um, really digging deep on my adjectives, but I think you get the idea is that I've been to spas that are fancy, like Knot Springs and Cascada, which is a new one in Portland. And it's like $100 for 3 hours, which is not affordable to go regularly. And I found that to get the benefits of this, you really need to, at least for me and from what I've seen in the last 3 years with customers, is that the people that become members and they have the unlimited membership and they spend the first 2 months coming to the spa 2 to 3 times a week and they just decide like this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to like go all in. Those are the ones that see the most benefits as far as their mental clarity, whole body inflammation. You get that huge boost of serotonin and dopamine, and it is long lasting, right? So because they're doing it regularly 2 to 3 times a week, they how can sorry, they feel really good. They feel you just feel so much better overall. And that was part of, I knew that what it did for me, but I did not see it. I hadn't had the like firsthand experience to see what it did for other people. And so I'm like, I was so floored every time a customer would come and, they bought a membership or they came back and then they told their friends. And so that is pretty much my mission within this industry, is to make sure it is for the people, right? Like I don't want it to be a thing where um the little guys get squeezed out and we are not able to have these really beautiful moments in a sauna where a customer, has just lost her husband and she's sharing with somebody her grief, and a complete stranger is there and overhearing, and there's tears in the sauna. And, people like that's the beautiful thing about Connect, is that because we have such a great membership base where they really are passionate about it. If there's new customers, they like kind of take them under their wings and coach them in the cold plunge. And so that is what has helped us build the brand and build kind of this this beautiful monster. Are there any questions, Jenny? She thinks that the questions that have been asked, I should just keep on my mission right now of telling you what my projections are and how I'm planning on funding it. So that is what we're gonna do. So I showed you that screen of kind of like what the sales growth trajectory has been historically for Connect. And so essentially, if I've done the calculations lots of ways. Like, so I know the average sale I get per customer. Um, I know kind of what our average net profit is per customer. And so I kind of have a very solid idea of like what size spa would give you kind of like the most bang for your buck, essentially, which I think is a spa that's about a 40 to 45 person capacity. I also think a big old flagship spa of like 100 to 150 to 200 people which sounds like extremely large, right? Well, that means that we'd be having, potentially like 1,500 customers come through at a time, and we would need to have like like a huge space. But what I think is probably the most manageable and the easiest to replicate is that 40-person capacity spa. So that's kind of what my plan is. Right now we're at 22, which is like kind of the max. I really learned a lot about what not to do. So I'm grateful that Shay, our operations manager, has been with me. She was my first like actual paid employee. And so she has been able to really hone the operations and the cleaning procedures and training of the staff and all of that kind of stuff. So we know kind of where our um I don't know what the right word is, oopsies are. We know where our, what would you call it? The negatives? You know what I mean? Like where the faults are. Like we know what we need to fix for the next spa. And so kind of what I'd like to do for Connect is essentially, as I'm gonna start this crowdfunding investor thing, which I'll kind of dive into with it, what the SMBX is. But essentially I'm gonna get as much money as I possibly can. I would love to raise anywhere between 400 to 600,000. That would be plenty to build a spa that's like a 40% capacity. I met with somebody yesterday and he told me, Michelle, you've been pumping the brakes, like just kind of reining yourself in. You should like floor in the gas pedal. You should ask for $1 million. And Shay was like, yeah, Michelle asked for $1 million. So what I love about the SMBX is that unlike Kickstarter or other crowdfunding investment things, the SMBX is essentially um, you set your goal. Like, so I'll probably set the goal of like 400,000. I don't know exactly. I'll get into that. But if I don't raise the 400,000 and like let's say I only raise 250, the project still goes forward. I just have less money to work with. If we blow past our 400,000 and we raise 800,000, let's fly, dude. Like we just would run with it. So essentially my goal is, well, it's a 60-day offering. We're going to see how much money we raise with the hopes that we have enough money to actually build the spa um how I want. And then gosh, excuse me. Sorry, stopped mid-sentence. Um Figure out how to build a 40-person capacity spa. And then that is essentially kind of like my prototype, my plug and play, right? So it's not going to be cookie cutter though, so don't you worry. It's going to have more like a McMinimans vibe where um, kind of like each location peppered throughout the Portland metro area has all the elements that we want. So we want to put our feet on the earth. We want to have, memberships in good community. We want to have sauna, steam room, hot tub, cold plunge, and a place to rest, and a place to go to the bathroom, and locker room. I think that's pretty much it. So, I don't know if all the locations will have space to host events like the sound bath and the lymph class that we've been kind of testing out at the current Connect. But the goal is I'm gonna figure out my prototype in Vancouver that's zoned in a zoned commercial space that can have anywhere between 30 to 50 people. And I'll show you kind of the property that I've got flagged as my plan A. Once I get that figured out, established, I'll know how to build the spa, I'll know how long it takes, and I'll know exactly how much it costs, or roughly. And so I wish you guys knew how much I think about this. It's actually quite silly. But what I have concocted and talked to my dad and my contractors is essentially to build the spa in a modular way. So I'll basically build the majority of the components. So like the steam rooms, the saunas, build as much as I can off site. So then when I start a lease on a property, um, I just basically do the utilities and the infrastructure, and then I roll in and set up. And so that really, I think, will help with my cost So I'm not, paying for a lease and taking 9 months to build, and I can just like start operating pretty quickly. So once I get that first spa in Vancouver built, then we're gonna kind of see where we go from there. I think in the 6 to 8 year mark, what I see in the Portland metro area is essentially one large spa in Vancouver. So I'm talking I'll have to do expand and have something that's in the 150 person capacity. That's kind of my goal, is to basically make a flagship location in Vancouver that's kind of like the mothership, and then have the smaller neighborhood spas peppered throughout the Portland market. So probably my first, or like the next location I build, is hopefully going to be somewhere like Beaverton, Tiger, Tualatin, that kind of area. Happy Valley, Gresham. I'd like to do something in the city, North Portland or St. John's, or I don't know, but that's going to, at that point, it's going to really, it's going to be, oh, I'm also going to go more Clark County. Don't you worry, Clark County people. So I'd like to do East Vancouver, Ridgefield. I have dabbled with the idea of doing, instead of it being like a Connect Wellness where I'm running everything and I have to figure out the staff and all of that stuff. I have dabbled with having, I don't know if you'd call it like kind of an affiliate type program. So, or franchise type program. So if essentially somebody is wanting to open a spa over in Tigard or Tualatin, I don't know, I haven't quite figured out all those details. I have some people that my contractor really wants to open one in Richfield, so we've talked about that at length. So we're just gonna kind of see how it goes. And I've learned that I've got to pivot. So that's Jennifer. I just got a question. I'm gonna rapid fire questions. Oh, okay. Rapid fire questions, you guys. Okay, go. What is SMBX? So SMBX, I don't actually know what it stands for. I should have looked that up, but it's essentially a company out of San Francisco. From my research, they have been operating about 4 years. Uh, I don't know exactly what year it was that the government changed investor regulations. So it used to be that if you wanted to invest in a business, you had to be an accredited investor, which meant you had to have a certain amount of assets and liquidity or whatever rules they had, where it basically made it so only rich people could invest in businesses. And so they've changed the investment regulations. And so SMBX is one of the first companies that has latched on to that and essentially developed a way to do a crowdfunding investment loan. So the SMBX essentially works like a term loan. So you set the interest rate, which is typically about 11%. It's like kind of fluctuates with the market, just like normal interest rates do. Um, and it is, I feel like I just lost my train of thought. Hold on. hmm It's gonna come back to me, I promise. No, don't. You can't do it. Do not. I'm still on the SMBX, Jen. Don't rabbit trail me. So you set the interest rate. So the SBA, um, their interest rate for a small business is anywhere from like 9.5 to 13%. So the SMBX, you might be thinking, Michelle, you're gonna pay 11% on money. That's pretty much what I would probably be paying with the SBA. And so what I love about the SMBX is it like anyone can invest. You don't have to go through this like rigorous uh investigation of your finances to see if you can invest. If you have $10, you can be an investor in Connect Wellness. If you have $50,000, you can invest all 50,000. And it's a very safe place to put your money. But I don't have to put up any personal collateral. So if I was not a good person, well, actually, I couldn't do this because I was going to say, like, I could get you to invest in my company and then I could take off. which I'm not gonna do. But SMBX, they have pretty rigorous standards for the companies that they put on their platform. So they you have to be in business for it's either 2 or 3 years. I think it's at 2 years. They do a full financial audit, like with the CPA. So it's CPA certified a financial audit if you're raising more than 124,000, which I'm going to do. So, and they've told me that that is actually a pretty rigorous part of all of this, which I have done a financial review when I worked for my parents' company. So I've done it twice. So I kind of understand what's about to happen. But essentially, they do a rigorous CPA, look at my financials, and then they kind of give you an idea of what they think that you should raise, and then they help with all of the marketing. Although I have got my own plan for marketing, and they have been super great with kind of allowing me to do how I want to do, and they have not been pushy. I have talked to 3 other local businesses that have done raises with the SMBX, and all of them said very good things. And it wasn't SMBX did not give me those people. I essentially went on the website. You can see the past raises, and you can see all that information. And so you can find businesses that are kind of similar, or there's actually not very many Sonic cold plunge businesses that have been on there. But once I get my campaign launched, all of the past 3 years of my finances, the business finances, are going to be filed with the SEC. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm not timid about sharing what my sales are, is because all of my profit and loss and balance sheet statements are going to be on the website. So if any potential investor can do their due diligence and see what I've been spending, how much I'm actually making. So that is kind of the SMBX in a nutshell. I think hopefully that's complete. Okay, so there's 3 more questions about the SMBX particularly. Oh, that's a great question. How do investors get paid? So I can't believe I didn't even talk about that. So essentially, the campaign launches, there's a 60-day window. So I've got 60 days to raise the money, pool the money. At the end of the 60 days, there's like a 2 or 3 day window where things close. I get the funds. SMBX has all your information as far as, well, like how you're going to want to get paid back. So I think it's all has to be direct deposited back into your account. So you have to give them that information. And essentially at the 30-day mark after closing, when I've gotten my funds, it you'll see when you say I'm going to give Michelle $100,000, you'll see how much payment you're going to get back each month for the term of the loan. So most of the loans are 5-year terms, which is essentially basically like an equipment loan. So at the 30-day mark, you start getting your principal and your interest back for the next 5 years. If I happen to strike it rich and I can pay off the loan in one big chunk, like let's say at year 3, I have enough money to pay everybody back. I can pay everybody back. So then you're only getting the amount of interest for the time that I borrowed from you. But I think that's the best way to describe it. Can you invest more later? No. No, basically I have a 60-day window. I am planning on doing more than one campaign though. So like my plan is to do the campaign for the Vancouver location. And what I love about it is I'm going to be able to pull from my own customer base and then from the SMBX customer base. And basically anyone in some stranger can invest. And then we'll build the location. We'll have that one-term loan, however much money we raise. If I decide, okay, like in like 2 years, I'm ready to do the next location, or maybe I want to do two more locations, then I'll do another fundraising campaign. And so then you could invest then. But if you want to be part of this first round, you got to be in the 60-day window. Says the question was, I might not have thought about this, but will there be special perks for investors? Yeah, there will be. I have thought about that. I think the plan, I saw a question that says, what are the risks? I think that's a good question. So I'm going to hold that one in my thing. I think my plan is basically to open the calendar to the new spa to people that have invested in the SMBX first. So they'll kind of get like the first, I don't know, it depends on how many people are there. So the first, I don't know, 2, 3 months. I don't know exactly how it's going to be. You'll kind of be the first ones that get to actually utilize the spa. I've also thought about doing some fun merch that is like, if you're you have to be an investor to be able to buy this special Connect Wellness merch. We did this art contest, and so I'm super excited to launch this new merch line of the art contest drawings because they're so cool. So that's kind of what my thought process is for investors. But I'm like totally open to suggestions. I've also thought about once the location opens, doing, some introductory offers, like if you want to have an annual membership, etc. I think I probably should touch on what my plan is with the original spa location once the second location opens. So, because the original location is in residential, I'm going to have to pivot and change how that one operates. So, my plan is to kind of like the members that have been coming to the spa that have been grandfathered in, essentially, will be able to have access to both spas. The original location will potentially be where it's members only overnight guests. So I'll add some more Airbnb overnight guest stuff and then potentially events and or just day use things. So I basically have to shrink my numbers down so that I meet the standards that the code enforcement is going to have. So if you're a newer customer, you're only going to be able to go to the new spa. A good thing you found me when you did. Um, okay, so there was the question of what are the risks? So essentially the risks are I might go bankrupt. I might not pay you back and you might not get your money back. But that would be stupid of me because I have big plans to build a lot of spas. And so I'm not gonna fail you. I'm like super confident. I have overthought this business model and I feel like I'm kind of the forerunner in the Portland market. And so um I've got big plans. So that's just kind of the baby step. Okay. Any other questions?
You just hit on a couple of them.
Just want to say, Jen, you are a fantastic moderator. Have I stopped building at the current location? Not really. I've got um I've got a couple more projects that I need to do, but I've pretty much put them all on pause to give my staff a break and to kind of as my mom will say, go around go when you're doing Monopoly and get my $200. So I've been paying off debt basically the past like 6 months and have not been building as much as I would like to. Yeah, so I'm not quite done, but I'm close. I'm probably like 80% done. Is there any more? No, I don't have a board of directors. I don't even know what they would do.
I got a couple different questions about how did you initially set your first
Okay.
spot?
Yeah. How did I initially set the spa prices and how did I adjust them? I essentially said, Michelle, what would you pay to go to the spa? That's pretty much what I said. And I've kept my prices really low because I'm kind of a cheapskate, basically, and I want to try to keep it as low as I possibly can. And I've actually had many discussion with the people in my life that say, Michelle, you can charge way more for this spa. And I'm just like, but I don't need to. Like, there's enough money. Like that is the goal is to keep if I build getting into my mind, people, you ready? If I build the best spas in the Northwest, in the Portland area, and I keep my prices low, what does that mean for everybody else? It means that they have to keep I'm like setting the market temperature, I suppose, on what is an acceptable price to charge customers. So, and I have to kind of keep it in line. I looked at other spas that were similar, like Everett House, Common Ground, Loyally, those type of spas that are more kind of like mom and pop versus like the Knot Springs, which are Fuji. So, anyway, I hear my dog. My dog. Just a second. Okay. Sorry, I feel like I had to let my dog out, and hopefully she calms down. Bailey would be good. Okay. Jen, were there more questions about anything? Oh, I do. I think one of my things is finances and growth projections. I kind of went through what I had as far as like my historical, um, what I've done, and my estimates are at year four. Um, hold on one second. I think I'm glad I muted it because my dog needed to go to the bathroom. So I had Jen. She's on it. So essentially, my estimate are is at year four, I think I'm going to do about 1.6 million in sales. In year five, if I have a 45 customers per session, um, and historically we run at about 60 to 70% capacity. So I'm very confident in these numbers. So I think at year five, I'll do 2.1 million in sales. And I think that's pretty much the goal of each neighborhood spa is like basically each neighborhood spa to have somewhere between the range of like 35 to 50 customers at a time. Keep it at the 60 to 70% capacity. And you would do on average about 2 million in sales for each location. And it's it's about a 25 to 30% net profit. So it's a pretty healthy profit margin. It doesn't feel stressful to me. Um, so yeah. Okay. So that is my you saw my past finances. It kind of gives you an idea of what my growth projections are. Um, what if I have a spa that you can have 150 to 200 people, you get the idea that it's probably about 8 million for that location. So, um, I think I think I'm gonna go into kind of the location that I found in Vancouver that I have as my plan A. And I kind of want to touch a little bit on how difficult it is to find a location that is zoned commercial that has earth. That's like pretty much the hardest part is that the city, when they're doing their planning stuff, they they put businesses around businesses. And so there's parking lots and you know what they are. They're just parking lots and strip clubs. There's really little of an outdoor element. So that is I think, probably the most challenging part about this is trying to find a location. And so I essentially just drive around until, I drive or I walk. I look on, is a commercial, basically like a realtor.com for commercial properties. It's called LoopNet, if you're not familiar with that. So you can kind of see what's for lease and what's for sale. And I've been doing that for 5 years. So ever since I knew I wanted to start a spa, I have been looking at properties. So I have a pretty good read on what's available and what would work. And it's kind of pathetic. So um I there where I live in Vancouver, I've moved from the spa house to downtown Vancouver. And there is an area in Uptown Vancouver on Fourth Plain and Kaufman that's it's very depressed. Like it's been just kind of like it has potential, but no one's done anything with it for 15, 20 years. So it's just kind of sad looking. And I drive drive past it, multiple times a day. And so that is kind of where I have, thanks, Jen, where I have kind of focused is for some reason I keep getting drawn to this Kaufman and Fourth Plain Center area. And so there is a little tire shop that is for sale by owner, and it is basically like an old 50s gas station. That was what I was originally going to purchase. You can let her off, Jen, because she's just gonna whine. Sorry. That's what I was originally gonna purchase. Uh, but he wants to sell it, and he wants to sell it for more money than I. Bailey, you're really messing up the vibe in here, honey. Okay. Sorry, pause. I'm gonna put her back in the basement. They can't hear the dog at all. So if you can't hear her whine, I'll just ignore her and she'll settle down. If she's whining, if she's bugging you, just know that she's staring at me at me right now. Um, I don't. Jen had a great question about occupancy changing in the winter and summertime. Yes, in the summertime we dip about 15%. And that's been all 3 summers. People are in the Northwest, we go do things. And so it's slow. So we've tried to pivot and change kind of our how we operate in the summertime, which we will continue to do so until we find our sweet spot. So, I think one of the most challenging parts about summer is staffing because our staff want to go do fun things too. So, um, yeah. Okay, so let me tell you about the my plan A on where I'm going to build this location. And actually, I made a little video today when I was like trying to keep myself occupied, so I didn't like think about think about um this thing. I put together, hmm, how do I how do I get to? I think I'm doing pretty good. So one of my concerns was that you're not going to be able to hear the sound on this. So Jen, what? When we roll this beautiful bean footage, if you guys are on your end, you can't hear the audio because I kind of narrate a little bit. It's just a 2-minute video. Just say something and I'll just narrate it here. Okay. So, hey, is there any sound? Okay. All right. So I'm going to start over and I will tell you kind of what it is. All right. So essentially, I knew I needed to be really close to the Oregon border because we have a lot of Portland customers. So this location is like essentially one of the first exits off of the I-5 corridor when you get into Vancouver. It's right off of Fourth Plain. So you take the Fourth Plain exit, you go towards the end, and it's right on Kaufman and Fourth Plain. And it's like this really ugly building. So it's this old thriftway that's been abandoned for 20 years. And it also has this like really nice brick building that's never been occupied. But that's not where I want to build the spa. Like where I want to build the spa is actually in the back corner of this commercial property. There is a shed and a house that needs to be torn down, and it's got these huge old growth trees. And yeah, so I approached the owner with this idea of if I can tear down this property because it needs to be torn down. And it's zoned commercial. It's about 5,000 square feet. It's got these huge trees, like I said, and it's got, it has like potential. I know it looks like really shady. I'm like, oh my God, Michelle, are you kidding me? But it's like you can see, it's like on the corner of Kaufman and Fourth Lane. That's kind of where that house is. And so these are kind of my inspo picks of what I'm going for is essentially I'm gonna try to recreate the Connect wellness vibe, but make it cool and funky and arty. And I don't, these are just my inspo picks. I don't know exactly what I'm gonna build, but you kind of get the idea. But I mean, you can't beat those trees. And the main thing is it's got earth that you can put your feet on. So that is my plan A. Um, I do have plan uh B and C. Um, but let's hope we don't have to go there. I like that property because um there's potential for me to expand into that. I know it seems crazy, into that thriftway or into, just bring in other businesses that will complement the spa. So yoga studio, so I like that there's potential for me to basically make a really huge, awesome place that's not just a spa, but that has a conglomerate, is that the right word, of like things that people can do with their friends, with their families, with their kids that is just like expands our whole body wellness, like mentally, physically, spiritually, like all of those things. So that's kind of what the vision is for this launch. That's what I'm going for. And I met with the owner of that property. The reason why it has never been leased, any of those buildings, is because he's really difficult to work for, like just work with. Every time I talk to somebody that's a business owner in Vancouver, they're like, oh man, I wanted to rent in Kaufman Center, but that guy doesn't want to rent. He's just difficult. I have been meeting with him actually since this last summer. I went inside that house and he tried to tell me that it could be fixed up for $50,000. And it's like literally a huge hole in the middle of the roof with mold and moss growing in it. And it's just awful. It needs to be torn down. So when I approached him with this idea of me tearing down that those the buildings on there and then just leasing the ground from him and bringing in my modular spa, and it's already got the power and the water, so that part's easy to switch over. He actually really liked the idea. So we're gonna roll with it. Hopefully we can figure out a negotiated terms and um yeah. Okay, Jen, I think I'm ready for the next question.
that we
Yes, you guys, we are killing it. What time is it? I feel like we are doing so,
have.
dude, we are killing it with our time. I'm like so so excited. The last thing I wanted to talk about is how I'm planning to make the launch successful. So, you know, like I said, if I could raise 600,000, that would be awesome. The more money I raise, the more spa I'm going to be able to build. So, my plan is we're recording this promo video or this Zoom meeting. I've hired my friend Jean, she's a filmmaker, and she's going to do a couple of interviews with some spa customers possibly. She's going to splice together a 3-minute promo video to put on the SMBX. I'm hoping to launch the SMBX campaign at the end of February. No, not end of February. Sorry, end of January, beginning of February. So that is my plan. They move pretty fast. As soon as I get them my financials, I should be able to launch it. But I got to get the promo video. So probably beginning of February, realistically, is when I'll launch the campaign. And then my plan is just like do this word of mouth market guerrilla, like tell everybody that we're trying to raise money and link them link them to the story and link them to what I'm trying to do. And my hope is that I'll be able to put together some graphic design of some essentially like 5x7 or 8.5x11 sheets that our community will be able to access, and you'll be able to print out these flyers and you'll be able to put them on the community boards at your Fred Meyer's or your doctor's office or your gym or wherever you think that there is a good amount of people coming through. Hopefully the flyers are like real eye catchy and we're just gonna see what we can do. So we're gonna do those flyers. My mom, my mom helped with my brother's campaign a couple of years ago because he did some politicking. And so we're also gonna do some like grassroots door knocking, and kind of explain what we're trying to do. That Kauffman Center has been such an eyesore for so long that I really feel like I'm gonna have a huge amount of community support. Um, and really the only thing that has kept anyone from building in that place is the difficulty with the landlord. So my hope is that once I build the spa on that corner and establish a really good working relationship with him, he will allow me to kind of be the master landlord for that complex so that essentially anyone who's wanting to rent will be able to, I'll be able to kind of pick and choose and kind of have control over what businesses come in so that we can have like a really awesome place. So that's my plan on how we're gonna fundraise. We're gonna see. I mean, it's a it's a it's a calculated risk to do this way. Just kind of feel like I want to touch base that I went last summer the whole route again. I did the SBA bank route at the 18-month mark. I kind of told you what happened with that, but I did that all again this last summer when I was almost at the 3-year mark. And so the SBA gave me a soft approval for 800,000. But there were so many parameters on how I could use those funds. Um, with the SBA, you had to have the buildings needed to be like all of my structures, so the saunas and the steam room and all of that stuff needed to be permanent structures, like on foundation, which is not, it doesn't work for me if I'm leasing something. If I was purchasing land and I was able to build the stuff and it was permanent, that would make sense. But if I'm just leasing something, I do not feel comfortable building a permanent spa, spending $400,000 to build a permanent spa on a property I don't own. It just doesn't feel right to me. So I love the idea of building it in a modular way. It gives me the freedom to be able to build the different structures in a creative way. And I think um, it that's kind of the vibe that Connect Wellness is right now. It's like these little tiny buildings, you feel like you're in McMinimans because you have to like walk around. So um that's kind of why I decided to go with the SMBX. I mean, I also went down the route of talking to investors that had large sums of money. And so I was like, well, maybe I can just get one or two investors and give them a percentage of the equity, but it didn't feel right. And I didn't feel comfortable giving away equity at this point when I just didn't. I love the fact that I can borrow from my community and essentially it's a win-win. So my community is able to make a good interest rate on the money, and the money that they're loaning me is going um to good, and it's benefiting the community. My plan is to essentially have kind of my, if you're in one of the other perks of the investor thing, is my plan is to continue to do these Zoom meetings maybe 2 to 3 times a year to touch base on where the health of the company is, what I'm doing with your money, how it's going, all of those things. So you guys don't, like, the goal is Bailey, you're driving me nuts, girlfriend. Sure. The the goal of this is to essentially make you guys feel super cozy about giving me your money. So like I want you guys to feel confident that I'm going to take your money and I'm going to use it wisely and it's going to benefit the community and we're going to be able to continue building a spa empire, as Shay calls it, in a way that's like really awesome. So actually there's probably, what are the questions? I'll send out a newsletter. again about the SMBX. And so I'll send out a newsletter. We'll post flyers at the spa. Um, as soon as the campaign launches, I'll let you know. So yeah, is that it? I think, I think that's it for questions. I'm like super grateful that you guys took time out of your evening to spend with me and that, um, I hope I was like clear and concise and got you guys jazzed and if you have questions after this or you want to, do some follow up, you can send me an email. I'm happy to have a one-on-one conversation. Like if for some reason you have 500,000 and you were like, dude, I wanted to give you all my 500,000, Michelle, why are you doing this SMBX? You could call me. We could talk about it. So, I mean, I'm open to if you feel like you have a big chunk of change and you want to be part of a franchise or anything like that, just let me know, I'm open to all that stuff. So I think that's it. Peace and love. I hope you guys have a fantastic night. And thank you so much for being here. Love you.